Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the PlayStation 4 Slim model and see how this specific, device holds up in 2023. Now, I will definitely tell you all of the PlayStation 4s. I love them a lot. I actually do love basically all the consoles that came out from, the PlayStation 3 up until the PlayStation 4s. All those consoles were amazing, including the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, even the Nintendo consoles, even though the Wii U didn't sell too well. I feel like those consoles brought a lot to the table and really pushed a lot of innovation. Although maybe it didn't look like it at times, I think a console like the PlayStation 4 Slim kind of showcased to us that, hey, you can get the same type of quality console for the most part and actually a better console in a smaller footprint. And I think that's kind of where we started ending off at. We looked at, historically from PlayStation. We look at the PlayStation 2, they dropped a slim model. We see the PlayStation 3, they dropped like two or three different slim models, including the 360S, from the Xbox side. And even with the Xbox Ones and the PlayStation 4s, they know that a lot of people love a slim model. And I personally am in the same ballpark. I love having a slim model of a device. And with the PlayStation 4, this is no exception. Now, I would still tell you if you have this console, it's still completely worth buying, or it's completely still worth using. Now, buying might be a little bit of a different thing, because if you can swing for a PlayStation 4 Pro, that might be a little bit of a better choice. PlayStation 5s are now a little bit easier to buy as well, so that they aren't as big of a process or as annoying to purchase as they used to be. So that might be a little bit more of a viable option as well. So if you're in the market, you can always go and buy a PlayStation 5 disc or digital version, and those consoles are going to be better than the PlayStation 4 Slim. But like I said, with the 4 Slim, this is still a very, very powerful console that has a lot of power within it. So a little bit of a background, this specific console came out in 2016, and it was supposed to be this smaller, a smaller footprint of a console. It was, I think, cheaper than when the PlayStation 4 originally came out with, and that's kind of something that we typically see. To keep things interesting from a lot of these manufacturers, they usually drop some sort of variation of the same console later on in the year, or later on in its lifetime span, like maybe like middle throughout its lifespan, and then they'll go ahead and drop basically like the Pro model at the end. And that's exactly what we should expect for the PlayStation 5s. If you notice that both the PlayStation 5 disc and digital version, those are big consoles. I think with the Slim model, it's obviously going to be a smaller model, and that's typically what they do. But then we should be getting a PS5 Pro probably like another year or two after that console comes out. With the PlayStation 4 Slim, it is approaching about 7 years old this year, which is honestly pretty insane. You wouldn't think, or looking at this console, you wouldn't think that it's already been 7 years, but it actually has, which is so crazy. Now, this console, like I mentioned, was supposed to be kind of an improvement in some ways coming from the original PlayStation 4. It was supposed to be focused, I think, in two things. One, it was supposed to draw less energy, so it's supposed to be like a little bit more power efficient. But two, it's also supposed to be a smaller footprint. So it wasn't supposed to be like big, gigantic version of the PlayStation 4. And if you remember the PS4, that was a pretty big, hefty console. That thing was not a small console by any means. And that was just kind of one of those things that happened. And I actually do like Sony for doing these types of things. I like all the manufacturers for doing this. When they drop basically these consoles and they iterate them, we don't have to wait 10 years for the next one. I think that is another really cool thing that happened here. Now, they did kind of change the way this console looked like as well. So if you remember with the original PlayStation 4, that console pretty much had, it looked really iconic and it looked really good. But if you remember, it had that little like reflective material on the top half of that specific console. With the PlayStation 4 Slim, that wasn't really the case. This specific console pretty much brought this matte texture all throughout the console, and that actually looked very good. Those types of things I love a lot, and when you do have a console like this, those things actually do end up, making the console look a little bit different than its predecessor, and that makes it stand out, and more people tend to buy these consoles than if they weren't to buy them. If you look at a PS4, compared it against a PS4 Pro, there's clearly some similarities, but you could see how it's almost like a combination of a PS4 Slim and a PlayStation 4. So I feel like that's what, Sony's going to be doing with the next Slim model as well, so we can put two and two together and see what the PS5 Pro would look like. Now, another thing with the PS4 Slim, according to some people, it was 40% smaller in size than the original model. So that is actually pretty crazy. The fact that we were pretty much able to get almost basically the same exact power from something like the PlayStation 4, but in a way smaller footprint, makes me just so happy because we're able to get just so much better technology, or at least even similar technology in a smaller footprint, which I think is extremely, extremely important. Now, another thing Sony did with this console was that basically the USB ports that were put on the front of the PlayStation 4, they now moved them to the back of the PlayStation 4 Slim, which I think honestly made a little bit more sense. Having both USB ports on the front I think is great, but most of the times you might be putting in some accessories or some expandable storage or something, and having those USB ports on the front can be they can throw things off, but I would rather have at least one USB port on the front for my controller. Having to swing a wire from the back to the front can be a little annoying, but beyond that it's really not that big of a deal either. So on the outside, I mean, this console still looks great. You still have quite a bit of a port selection on this console as well. And those types of things make this console hold up very, very well in my opinion. Now the footprint of this thing, I mean, I've hit on so much, but I love having the smaller type of console because if you want to go somewhere, you can just take it with you. And again, those types of things hold up very well. I love having that type of, or being in that situation, or if I wanted to carry this console around, I could, and it wouldn't be like a super uncomfortable feeling console. That's kind of another thing to keep in mind as well. Now beyond that, I mean, we have to talk about the gaming selection behind this console, and there are tons and tons of games available for something like the PlayStation 4 Slim. So you have to remember that the PlayStation 4 Slim has pretty much the same capability as all the other PlayStation 4s. So no matter what game you could play on any of those consoles, you can also play on this specific console as well. And that is a very cool thing that we have going for this type of device. So with the PlayStation 4 Slim, I mean, not only is this console very beautiful, it's going to have a lot of capability and whatnot, but the PS4 Slim is going to be handling up and holding up very, very well in the future. There's going to be lots of games that are going to be coming out for this thing. There were already lots of games that came out for this thing, which is awesome. But if you look at the future, I mean, a lot of these games are still going to be digital, meaning you can just go inside of the PlayStation Store and download all those games from there. And you don't really need a disc tray, you don't really need, this console has it, but you don't really need to even leave your house anymore to download these games. Because of that, game developers know that there's still a massive library of people who are using these older consoles. So they're not just going to go ahead and, maybe if there's first party games, they'll make them, exclusive for the PS5. But for a lot of people, they're just going to go ahead and just, keep developing games for the PS4 and even the Xbox Ones because they know a lot of people still own those consoles and they know that it's still kind of hard to get your hands on certain variation of these consoles too. So because of that, they're going to not, only make games for the PS5, they're going to also port those games over probably to the PS4 so they can go ahead and, continue to make money from them. And I've seen a few developers do that even recently. Before, when it was like 2020, 2021, even 2022 last year, we still saw a lot of that. Now it might be slowing down a little bit, but even then, you still have a humongous array of games that you can play on this thing. So I look at this console and I just get super happy about it because you still have a massive library of games that you can play on this thing. And that is a really good thing to keep in mind here. It's definitely not like the craziest, no-brainer of things in the world, but I do look at this console and I am very happy with the way Sony's approached it. And I do think the game developers, if they just keep developing a few games every year, I think that can hold a lot of people onto this console a little bit longer. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll tell you is, I think the PlayStation 4 Slim is still completely worth buying, especially for somebody who doesn't want to spend that much money on the PS5s, or if it's very, very hard to get your hands on a PS5. But keep in mind that the future of this console doesn't look as good as compared to the past. So when we look at the PS5s, the future of the PlayStation 5 looks better than the past of the PlayStation 5 since it took so long for people to get their hands on that console, and now it's becoming more widely available, and now we might be getting way more games and way more things available for that console that, are going to just spark interest to a lot of people. With the PS4 Slim, it could end up being that the best days of the console are behind us. There may still be a few things developed for it, but for the most part, it's pretty much on its last leg, and it's not a bad thing, but, I think the PS4 Slim is still worth buying, but the PS5, PS4 Pro, if you can get one of those consoles, I'd probably recommend going up there. So that pretty much covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.